So the game is Bull Moose. This is a pre-publication version. This is just a playtest version of it that Patrick Stevens allowed me to sent me a copy of it. I think he's got it going to the presses right now. I'm not sure if everything is. I don't know if the rule book is. To some extent, I hope this is not the final rule book that was online because it's a little fuzzy, although it doesn't look like too complex a game. But there are some concepts that I think probably need to be clarified in it. At the very least, there'll be a better online version. Obviously, there's a strange sort of relationship in the sense that I'm getting a pre-publication version here. Patrick's been very good about giving me copies of either playtest things or preview copies, which is nice, and it's especially great in this case because this is a game I really, really wanted to look at. So, when I first picked up, 1960, The Making of a President, which got kicking around up here. The first thing I mentioned, because I did really like that game, was, wow, it would be awesome if some other interesting elections were done. Now, I know Campaign Manager, which is also kicking around somewhere. I have no idea where I have that. There it is. Covers the 2008 election, and I finally picked that up a while back. I haven't played that for you guys, but then Patrick managed to get somebody to design the one that I thought was the most interesting of all, which was the 1860 election, and that's Divided Republic. That's a really cool game. And then the other election that I thought really needed to be covered was the 1912 election. I actually didn't realize quite how rich it was in terms of parties available. What he's gone with here is to go with actually 5 different players. I figured it would make a good 3-player game, Democrat, Republican, and the Progressives, or the Bull Moose Party. But he's thrown in Debs' Socialists and, of all things, the Prohibition Party. Neither of which I think had a chance of winning the election, but we'll see. Maybe they have a chance of winning it in this game. I kind of feel like either way you take that answer, it's going to be flawed, right? Because if they have a chance of winning the election in the game, and a fair chance, then the game loses some historical accuracy. But if they don't, it's not a good game for them, right? It would suck to play a game where you're destined not to win. So to some extent, I almost feel like the victory conditions, if it was to represent historical reality, shouldn't allow them a chance to win the election easily. But if they place very well, they might actually come out ahead of other players. But that's not what this is going to do. This just takes it on. He who wins the election wins the game. Okay. So, like I said, the rules are a little iffy here, but essentially what you're going to be doing, this is a different style of game from Divided Republic in some ways. What you're going to be doing is trying to collect up cubes, and the little ones count as 1, the big ones count as 5. These are really big. I'm sure the production components are going to be completely different. But I have to say, these huge cubes, they kind of work on this map. They may not work so well in Delaware, though. But the map is awesome. I know it's a little worn. It's gone to a lot of cons and everything, and the cards are, just handmade and then laminated, and they've taken some damage too. But it's sort of almost a rubbery plastic type thing. It's a really, really cool material for a map, and I'm not helping you decide at all here, but I'm just thinking, wow, I think I'd like games that have this. The only problem with it is folding it seems to do damage to it. so it should probably be kept rolled up. If you ever make a map, I think making it on this kind of plastic thing sounds great. You could spill some liquid on it and it's not going to hurt it. And the cards are laminated, so it wouldn't hurt them either. Awesome, huh? But knowing what Numbskull puts out component-wise, I'm pretty sure the map is going to be really a nice hard map. They always have a nice texture on them too. Okay, so let's get to the game. I'm going to try to follow the rules here rather than go off on my own because I've only read through them once. So bear with me. I'm sure by the time it gets put out, there's going to be people who are more qualified than I am giving you the rules explanations, but I'm going to be doing the playthrough as well, so that'll be cool. So the first thing in the rules covers is the candidate distinctions. It doesn't terribly well explain when these happen, but it seems to be every turn. Each candidate plays with a unique ability throughout the game. The Republicans are going to be able to move one of their cubes anywhere within the region they occupy at the end of the round. So these are the player candidate pawns, and the regions are defined by these large colored areas. And he cannot use this to place cubes in California or North Dakota or South Dakota. South Dakota. No Republican ticket in either of those. That's why. Okay. So they can't possibly win those two states. The Progressives, they get an extra cube at the end of each round placed anywhere in the region they occupy. Wow, that's potent. The Progressives may not by any means place cubes in Oklahoma where they don't have a ticket. Fair enough. The Democrats gain a cube in every state they occupy. In the state they occupy, every time they play a card for the numeric value in the South. I don't know if that means you have to be in the South to play that. I think so. We'll see a little later on. The Socialists get a cube for each state they have a tie for majority that they are involved in at the end of each round. So if the Socialists can arrange to be tied, they'll end up being ahead in that state after their round. And the Prohibition can move a cube belonging to an opponent from the state they occupy to another state in the same region. Republican and Progressives may not be moved to a state where they are not on the ticket. Yeah, no shock. Whenever an opponent plays a card against you, you gain 2 cubes in popularity. So in addition to the states, you're going to have these 3 special things that you're also competing for. The newspapers, the Senate support, and popularity. And those are going to give you some bonuses at the end of the game in terms of placing some stuff there. Anything exciting about the board that I need to say that I haven't said yet? Nah. Each state has its own little box. Now, there's 2 kinds of states. The ones with square blocks, which are already leaning towards a certain party, and then the swing states, which have a circle, and they have all kinds of special rules at the end of the game as to how they're, yeah, we don't want to have that happen again, as to how they're able to generate additional votes. So they're more in play in a sense. We have some little symbols which indicate which party is favored in given states. And swing states will not have that, but I think every other state does, all the normal ones. And you also have these little rail hubs, which are going to make it easier to move in and out of those states. Talked about your cubes. Each player's got their own deck of cards, and the mechanism by which they're going to get their cards is a little different from normal. Now, let's take a look at a card. So, the cards have a number of pieces of information on them. They have a numeric value, which is going to be your CDG type value there, card-driven game, where you're going to have options of how to use that. But mainly you're going to be grabbing cubes and putting them as votes. But you can also use it for movement. Some symbols that indicate who you can use it against. The rail icon, I think, is required to use rail movement. Action occurs in the south. This is going to have a specific action against certain people. We can't really read it in the photocopy. I don't know what the campaign button does for you. This can be used for newspaper points. So you're going to have the option between playing a card for points or playing it for its event. We'll see that in a moment too. Okay, so when you play the card for its number value, you can move your marker on the board and or place cubes in the state that's currently occupied by the player's marker. After movement is actually. As the movement action, if you have a rail hub icon on your thing, for the effect of the text, you can add support cubes to endorsement boxes if you have a senator or newspaper endorsement icon. Here's the newspaper on here. Okay. And the play against the opponent will probably fit with the text of the card, essentially. Turn order. Random. No. The Republican's the first player each turn, and then it goes clockwise. And I'm going to have to be careful about this and actually play clockwise because there's fixed seats in the game. I usually like to go counterclockwise just because I'm stupid that way. Okay. So the sequence of play, there's going to be 7 rounds in the game. Each one is going to involve each player having 4 chances to play a card from their hand, and then you're going to have okay, when the final player plays the glass card in the hand, 3 player abilities are performed and a redeal occurs. We'll have to look at that because maybe these player abilities happen only there. We'll see. I don't remember that being spelled out here. All right, so I don't know how many player abilities are there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this is end of round, not end of round. This is every time you play a card. End of round, and this looks like anytime you occupy the space. So we'll have to remember how those operate a little differently, the different player abilities. Some of them only work at the end of the round. Okay, so that clarifies that issue, I guess, that I had. And let's make sure our battery is running because we're running low. Okay, during your play of the card the way the cards are going to be played is you shuffle your deck. You have 28 cards. You get 8 of them in your hand. Then you pick 4 of those 8 that are going to be your first turn. Now 28 divided by 7 is 4, and the other 4 you put on top of your deck, and you're going to get a chance to play them next time. You'll be getting a draw of 8 cards again. Pick 4, dump the other 4. So you have some selection as to what your hand's going to be each time, so you can delay playing cards that are going to work well late in the game at the early stages. Now, when I do my playthrough, it's going to be really hard to try to figure out what to do with given cards in terms of that. It may be obvious as I play, and I'm sorry about all the movement here, but we're trying to get the battery to keep charging. Okay. Let's see what else we have. And then once a card is used, shit. Pardon my French. Yep. I got a pile of garbage for a camera here. I bought a new camera, but I have to switch my memory card out to use it, and we're just not getting it to stay. Okay, it looks like it's back on for a while. So any cards you use get discarded. They're not going to come back into play. County stumping, rail pass, barnstorming, and whistle stop last for the remainder of the round. So you want to probably get these out early in your round, in the round on one of your early turns, so that you get the extra movement or whatever from them. And then they'll be discarded at the end of the round. During card play, you can use the card's numeric value to move to other states. Movement point cost is equal to 1 support cube per move to an adjacent state. There's no special cost for crossing regions. Adjacency is by the map for the most part. The 4 corners are not adjacent. The battery is not cooperating. All the eastern states are considered adjacent to each other because they're so tightly packed. That's basically the size of one western state there. Keep wiggling this and hope that we don't run out of battery. Okay. Costs an extra movement point to enter a space where another candidate is. It costs 1 per candidate. After you move, you are allowed to place cubes in that state. You can't do it as you move or in the state that you're in unless you have special cards that allow it. If you want to stay in the same space and you don't want to move, you can throw all your cubes into there. All the states in the east are adjacent to each other. Yeah, you can move adjacent to the east, which is Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia. And that just costs you 1 movement to get to. It costs 1 point per occupying candidate to enter and stay in a state other candidates occupy, but you can train through it at the normal cost of 1 per state you traverse. Progressives and Republicans can't campaign in the states that they're not on the ballot. Let's keep looking. They are allowed to move through them. Rail pass, barnstorming, and whistle stop allow you to move to a state another player occupies without a penalty. And you can combine this with other cards, this ability, if it's a multi-round, multi-turn card. The opposite state, the 4 corners. Okay, rail hubs and express trains. If you have a card with an express train on it, just a little choo-choo here, then you can move from any rail hub to any other rail hub. These have no further use, though, and may not be played for their numeric value or the action text. So it's just a movement card if you do it that way. Your cubes, you can play it according to action text or the numeric value, but not both. If you use the numeric value, you can move and add support cubes to where you end up. If you choose not to move, you can just add support cubes to where you end up. You can put the cubes in the state you occupy after a move or in the state that you currently occupy if you don't move. You place the cubes in the endorsement box if your card has a newspaper or Senate icon. When cubes are placed in these boxes, you do not have to put a minimum in the state that you occupy, but you can distribute them between the state and the endorsement boxes. And these are your endorsement boxes. Not the popularity. That works a little differently. If your card's played for the action text, you do what it tells you to. And there's California has a split caucus up here. The Republicans can't be in either of them, I believe. Maybe I'm mistaken. If your marker is in California, you place in the bigger box. Oh, your marker gets placed in the bigger box. Okay. You can place cubes in either of the 2 boxes. Now, I don't know. I think the Republican Party being split means the majority of electoral votes are going to be progressive, and the Republicans can place here. I don't think they're not on the ticket at all, but I'm not sure. It says elsewhere that they can't place in California, so maybe they're just forbidden from placing it all there. That probably makes more sense. But I don't know why they'd want to fight so hard for those 2 votes, so even if they were allowed. Okay. Once the last card's been played and all the player abilities have been executed for the end of the round, the election process begins. There may be states that have no cubes in them, and they're going to get some additional cubes, and swing states are going to get some additional cubes in them. So, each empty state, this is kind of weird. You're going to go through this process where they talk about empty states. Well, empty states are defined as empty at the start of this process. And then anything that affects the process, as far as I can tell, keeps adding cubes to it. So if in step 1 cubes are added to a state, well, they can still be added in later steps, even though the state's no longer really empty. Okay, so empty states that have a party icon will get cubes based on that icon, and it looks like it's one of the state of the icon that is indicated. So if Colorado is empty, it's going to get a progressive and a Republican cube in it. And those are by the colors as well as by the symbol. If it's a swing state and it's empty, 1 cube of each color goes in it. Why? Well, that could change pluralities, I guess. I don't know. Okay, then support cubes are added from the endorsement and popularity boxes. Support cubes from the winner of the newspaper endorsement box will go into empty states. So how does this work? Well, there's going to be a concept of a plurality. And let's jump over to that, because if you don't understand how that's going to work, there's a concept of an absolute plurality in the game. Plurality is pretty clear. Okay. You have an absolute plurality if you have twice as many cubes as the highest opponent in that state or endorsement box. If you get this, you will win that state or endorsement box, and all the opponent's cubes will be removed, leaving one of his cubes in the state, or all in the endorsement boxes. Okay, so if you're the only, if I have 2 cubes and 3 people each have 1, I'm double theirs, so they're going to get booted out, and now I'm going to have 2 of these in here, because that's gonna they're gonna be allocatable. If it's in a state, it doesn't really matter how many cubes I have if I'm the only person in there, so I'll just leave 1 in there, and that's how you do it. And these green and blue are hard to tell apart. Okay, because if I'm the only person with cubes, I win it. If I don't have that plurality, I'm gonna have to draw from among those people who are not doubled by the leader. Okay, so if I have 4 blue, 3 red, a green, and 2 yellows. Let's say that's my situation. Well, I don't have an absolute plurality, so I don't win the Senate support. But I do knock these guys out of the Senate support. And then what happens is we throw all these in a cup or something and draw one of them. And whoever gets the successful draw ends up keeping all their pieces in the box. Or if it's a state, keeping the only piece in the state. Okay, so I want these in here because I'm going to be able to distribute those into other states, and that's what we're going into here. So with the endorsements, whoever wins that endorsement race, either through an absolute plurality or through the draw, will get all their cubes, and they can put them into empty states. If it's a newspaper endorsement. If it's a senatorial endorsement, they go into swing states. It didn't have to be empty. Sometimes there's empty swing states, they can get both. And then popularity cubes, whoever wins that, is going to get them to distribute in any states. So these become big kind of victory chance, jackpots or whatever. And it's kind of interesting there because you could put a lot of cubes in there and get knocked out by somebody who has less and lose a large investment, basically, at the end of the game. That kind of excites me, but it could be it could be a little bit too much luck backloaded at the end of the game. All right, let's see. So these are done in sequential order, but they're all allowed to be put on the board into states that were empty, for example, at the beginning of the empty state point. So, newspaper endorsements. You do these first. And that's important because they go to the empty states, right? Those are the ones that we had the most trouble. And whoever the winner is there gets to place them into, gets to place all his cubes into any empty states on the board. If there are no empty states, he dumps them all in his home state. The senatorial endorsements are going to go into swing state boxes. Whoever wins there takes all his cubes and can put them into any swing states on the board. There will always be swing states. Popularity. Each player has one card that if he plays it for the action text will give him a cube in here. Cards with an opponent's icon on them can be played against the specific player or any player if the card has an eagle. Whenever a player plays a card to remove cubes from an opponent or opponents, the opponent played against will gain a cube in the popularity box. So if you get dirty tricked, basically, you get some additional popularity. There's no draw for popularity. On election day, after the endorsements are figured, whoever has the most support cubes in there automatically gets to place the extra, however many more he has than the next highest player, in any states. If there's a tie, all tied players receive their overage in turn order. In case of a tie with no overage, if everybody has the same amount, everybody gets one cube in turn order. Okay, we already talked about the absolute plurality, and then it's time to determine the elections. Okay, so in any given state, if you have an absolute plurality, you win the state, and you're the only person there. Otherwise, you take all the support cubes from the state and draw for a winner, just like you were with these, right? So there's no guarantees with what you're placing on the board. You can't look at the board and know for sure how well you're doing. The electoral votes are listed here, and your goal is to get to 531. I'm sorry, there are 531. The goal is to get the highest number, and it's that simple. Except if there's a tie, the player with the most states would win. Now, that's a little incorrect and maybe a simplification. So here's the thing. You have to get the majority in the actual election, or else it gets thrown into the House. And then what do you do there? Right? So that becomes kind of complicated. We'll go with how the rules handle it. If there's a tie, we throw it to the most states. But that's really not how it would actually be handled. The actuality of it is probably only the Democrats and Republicans would have a shot to begin with. Okay. Then if you're not playing with 5 players, you could play with less characters. Political leaning cubes. Okay. If you're playing with less players, you first get rid of the Prohibition Party, and then you get rid of the Socialists. And that's about it. And it doesn't sound too complicated. let's give it a see how it plays out.